Welcome back. We already talked about the prominence of LaMelo Ball, but there's another prospect vying for that number one pick in James Wiseman. Wiseman, a freshman big from Memphis, is projected as the number 2 overall pick in the 2020 draft by CBS Sports' Gary Parrish. After playing just 3 games for the Memphis Tigers last season, Wiseman left school amid an eligibility battle with the NCAA. However, in those 3 games, Wiseman was spectacular, averaging 19.7 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game while shooting 76.9% from the field. I'm joined by Max McElroy and Jerome Sweeney to debate on if Wiseman has the highest ceiling among this year's NBA draft prospects.
Well, I think this is clear. I think James Wiseman is without a doubt have the highest ceiling. I think he's the best player in this draft. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go number 1 overall just because the Timberwolves have Karl Anthony Towns and there's not a huge need there for a big. But James Wiseman, I think, when you see him, he just leaps off the top. I was talking to Jacob earlier, and he said that when he went to the McDonald's All-American game, coaches and scouts are both there. They're just saying he is the best player on the field when he's on the court, and just a game breaker really you cannot miss him, I would say, as a prospect. And number 2 overall is perfect because, he's right there, the Golden State Warriors, and they're going to have Steph back, they're going to have Clay back, and then they're going to have, now they could potentially get James Wiseman, just a true star.
For the Warriors, are they going to be stretched too thin outside the three-point range because they are just going to have Steph and Clay, and James Wiseman is going to come into a crowded front court, which could be good for him because that would allow him to develop behind Willie Cauley-Stein type players, which are proven to be effective centers in the NBA. But are those centers stars? No, that he's going to develop behind. How hard is it to become a superstar center in the NBA? Extremely hard. So I think there's more bust potential than actual hype potential for James Wiseman because even though he played 3 games, of those 3 games, he played 1 game against a major conference team. And in that game, he had his worst game out of the 3 games that he played. Granted, it's a small sample size. So basically, we have a high school player going number 2 in the draft this year.
I think that, for starters, it worked out really well for a couple NFL stars, specifically named Kobe Bryant and LeBron James.
Right.
But I don't think the high school really has an effect because he did get to play in college, and he played 3 games, obviously, and if it wasn't for the NCAA and all of their rules and stuff.
Well, I think it's just, it comes down to experience on the next level, and he has experience playing against high school kids where these guys that are being drafted with him have experience playing each other, NBA players, overseas professional players. I think just his competition that he's faced is going to put him at an extreme disadvantage to every other, even the second-round guys, the undrafted guys have played better competition, so they know how college players move the ball better than him. They have an understanding of how college players transition to the NBA, and James Wiseman's just been working out for the last 10 months.
Well, that's basically what most college basketball players have been doing anyway. Obviously with COVID, there hasn't been a lot of people being able to practice and. Even like the NBA Combine, and you have different stuff, media stuff, all that isn't really happening. So I think this draft is kind of full of people who are going to need a little bit more work and need a little bit of development. And what's a better place for development than Golden State, where you might not have to be able to have 25 points a game, and you might just need to be able to rebound the ball, and you'll be able to rotate him in.
Assuming he goes to Golden State, barring any crazy situations, I think it's going to be hard for him to figure out, where do I line up on defense against these NBA big men? Where do I set up in the post against these big men? How do I not foul out of games? How do I play defense? Is my defense going to translate to the NBA from my high school? And I'm having some concerns about his defense.
So who do you think will be who could be the superstar of this draft and who could be the best prospect?
I think superstars of this draft, LaMelo Ball, as much as you hate to say it, you watch him, we've all seen him grow up playing basketball these last couple of years, but it's been weird for LaMelo because he's been playing overseas in Lithuania and New Zealand, but he's been a star overseas. He's been really good, and there's no doubt he's better than his other 2 brothers. For LaMelo Ball, he just needs to grow into his body. He's 6'7", 180. He needs to put on some weight because if you watch his highlights, he just gets knocked off of his shot easily. He takes bad shots. So I think they're both low IQ players, And I would even argue that Anthony Edwards is also a low IQ player. So I think all three of the consensus top picks are going to need some time to develop and figure out how to make NBA smart plays and not turn the ball over and figure out how to play two sides of the game.
Absolutely. I just feel that, well, James Wiseman, I mean, being 7'1" is already very helpful just in terms of
And
defensively.
having a 7'6" wingspan, too.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Really, really beneficial.
He's huge. And the big knock on him is like, oh, he just needs to gain a little bit of muscle. And if he can even extend his shot out to the three-point line, he will be unstoppable in the league. I think in terms of just like pure shooter between like mid-range, I think he has the best mid-range. If he can develop that three-pointer, there's no question in my mind that he's going to be just an absolute
Well,
star.
I even think that all of the top three first picks need to develop their outside shooting a lot.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see LaMelo Ball shooting in the 20%. You see Anthony Edwards being good at some points, but he's inconsistent. They all need to get consistency, and I think James Wiseman's going to take the longest out of all three of those to find his groove in the NBA. And I think he might have to find another team besides the Warriors to find his groove because they have so many stars on the Warriors that are coming back. Wiggins wants to be a star. He scores points. Clay, Steph, Drummond, or Draymond, it's going to be hard for him to find valuable time. And if you're a first-round pick, you're going to have expectations. You want to be good. You want to put up points. You want to produce. I don't know if there's room for him to produce in that offense.
Well, I think that even like just being on the Warriors, a place where he doesn't have to score 25 points a game, that's a place where he could just be solid. You know, he could be 10-10-10 across the board. And I think that's just a great place to be, especially as a rookie coming in. Who knows how much time they're going to have to be able to start the season. Obviously, the season starts in December, so there's a pretty short turnaround.
It's one thing for sure is it'll be a very interesting draft tomorrow night and an even more interesting season coming up.
Absolutely.
We're going to throw it back over to Jacob, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, well, I think that James Wiseman has by far the highest ceiling in this draft, that modern NBA is all about bigs that can stretch the floor, and James Wiseman can do exactly that. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us. This is the last show of the semester, so on behalf of all of us here at Take a Side, I want to say thank you to Cal Butcher, the man that has made this show a possibility. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at TakeAsideKU to keep up with all of our latest debates over these next couple months. We'll be returning next February for another season. For all of us here at Take a Side, I'm Jacob Polacheck, and thank you for joining us.